Buenas noches, familia. Good evening, my friends. This is Ray Collazo, and you're watching and listening to the Found in Translation talk show, the talk show that stacks truth about politics and today's hottest issues. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope your friends and family are safe and healthy during this COVID-19 season that we're going through. And we hope this episode brings you a little more comfort, a little more information, a little more solidarity with understanding that as parents, as caregivers, as heads of household, we are here not only for all of you, but specifically our children, our most important asset in our country and within our communities. And so today is for the kids. Found in Translation, thank you so much for joining us again. This is your host, Ray Collazo. If you're watching and listening to the show, please share with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. This is a very important conversation with experts and just members of the family. And we're going to have a real thorough conversation on how to support our children from a health, personal, a social, and education perspective during this amazing historic times in our country. Who better to join me than my co-host, Sulaih Picorelli. Sulaih, welcome to Found Translation, my friend.
Hello, Ray. How have you been holding up?
Hey, as best can be expected. You know, I'm one of those. I should have had I just took my gloves off because today was the first day I buckled down to let them deliver some groceries to me. And I'm one of the ones that took it all out, didn't bring wiping everything down before it came into the house. So I just don't want to get sick. I don't want to get sick. And I'm really, so the anxiety of that is what gets me at times. But the kids, which is the theme of the show, my sons are doing really extraordinarily well with this. And, but they miss their friends. They miss their whole life. Right. But we're together. We're safe. So everything's okay. So Sulaih, how are you doing? You and your family, your children?
Well, I'm not going to lie. It's been tough. It's been really tough. My husband was just notified that he has to self-quarantine for a while. I guess someone that he works with tested positive. He has no, he's fine. He's good. We're doing well. But it's the first day that I have him at home with the kids.
Oh, wow.
So it was nice. It was nice to have all the four of us together.
Yeah, no, it definitely is grounding people back to what's important. There's no question about it. So, and to really live in gratefulness, that's going to be part of the theme of the show. But again, today we want to really delve into a conversation with some experts and just wonderful people around these issues. Sulaih, let people know, give people a sense of what they're going to expect on this episode of Found in Translation.
Absolutely, Ray. So we've got lined up a great panel of educators, advocates, and students who are going to share their experience with us and how is it that we support our kids as they are transitioning to, having to be home, being schooled at home during these scary times. In the second segment of the show, we're going to hear from an American father who had to escape with his family to get back into the U.S. Because of COVID-19. Again, we want to thank absolutely everyone for watching live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and as well as listening to the podcast version or on WPPMLP 106.5 FM here in Philadelphia.
Thank you so much, Sulaih. And of course, this episode is dedicated to those we've already lost. We've already lost just the United States alone over 100 people. There is someone within a few degrees removed from everyone watching and listening to this conversation is either they're very ill or that has passed. There was a gentleman, Mr. Stottlemyre. I don't know if one of our Michigan guests was familiar with him. He was sort of one of the great leaders of the city of Detroit, very close to a lot of friends of ours from the Detroit, Michigan community. So, and there's so many names. I mean, the wonderful Dominican fashion designer, Jenny Lorenzo, I believe was her name, that we lost in Santo Domingo. So just a lot of tragedies. But we're here to support each other and again, to support our children. And who better to two wonderful, not only friends of mine, but leadership and education consultants. I want to bring to the stage from Generationology, Jeffrey Vargas, and Cool Speak, Ernesto Mejia. Gentlemen.
What's going on, brother? How you doing?
Hey, Ray. What's going on, my man?
This is just a bevy of riches. All we need is a big man for a good 3-on-3 team.
There you
I
go.
can come off the bench. I'm hot and cold with the hoop.
We got a lot of shooters out here. That's for sure.
There not enough balls for that team. So let's just start this conversation. Jeff, let me start with you. Not only a nationally recognized expert on how to develop teams across generations in particular, but not only a great friend of mine, but who I consider personally a spiritual mentor. One of my spiritual big brothers, really grounds us in our spiritual base, around to support our people. Just share with us your thoughts, brother, as a father, as a parent, as an activist. I mean, these are some incredible times. Give people some thoughts as a parent in dealing with our children here during this COVID-19 season.
Yeah, this COVID-19 season is nothing like we've ever seen before. Though that is a truth, all of us at some time in our lives have experienced unbelievable tragedy, and sometimes you got to go back in history to find out what it is that you're supposed to do. Real quick story that I think is fitting. I think most of you that know me well know that our oldest, Sochi Rose, who's 13, awesome teenage girl. We do have a teenage girl in the house, has cerebral palsy. And when she was 18 months old, she was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. And I remember that day hearing the diagnosis, coming into the house, walking up. We had 12 sets of stairs from the garage. And when I got to the top of the 12th stair, my mom was waiting there. And she says, "Papi, what's wrong?" And I collapsed and I fell in her arms. And I cried like I'd never cried before. Everything inside of me. And I told her, I said, "Mama, she's been diagnosed with cerebral palsy. We don't sure she's gonna walk again." Later that afternoon, my 18-month-old at the time, I was holding her in my arms and we were rocking back and forth. And she knew I was crying. And at 18 months old, she turned to me over her left shoulder and she looked at me in the eye and she says, "Papi, it'll be okay."
Wow.
Our kids can give us that which sometimes we can't get anywhere else. But in order for us to experience that, there's a couple things that we have to do. And first and foremost is that we have to be fully present with our kids. And so we teach a leadership workshop called The Present of Presence. And in it, we ask participants to do this. And as a parent, I'm going to ask you to do this. Give yourself a presence check. What? A presence check. So are you present here physically? Are there ailments that are bothering you? And so when you're interacting with your kids, think about your presence in these 4 segments. Are you there physically? Is something bothering you physically? Can your kids see it? And is it okay that they see it? Mentally, look, if you're not getting fatigued, tired, and you feel challenged in this environment, then you're not fully connected because none of us have been in this place before. Mental check with your kids. The third area is your emotional state. Now, look, I don't know about you, but somehow during COVID-19, I think I've developed a second voice of yelling that I didn't know I had. It's like that deep bellowing yell. Well, the reality is we shouldn't just be obviously engaging our kids that way. We should also be engaging them just as loudly with love. And then finally on the presence check is understand what your next step is. Once you've done that presence check, how are you going to get yourself aligned the right way so that you can engage your children the way they expect it? Yeah, social distancing is our requirement. But emotional distancing is not what we will do. We have to be fully present and we have to be fully engaged.
What are you finding with your children? Jeffy, your children are very different, right?
Oh.
What are you finding? What have you learned from them in these last few weeks? Let me ask it that way. Is you say that they give us the strength sometimes we don't know we even have, which is a very powerful statement, a very true statement. So what have you learned from them? Because I think we actually should flip it because they're going to teach us a lot in this process.
Yeah, call it out, Ray. You're right. And I think for me, there's 2 things that I've seen. One is they are reinforcing and they're teaching me the power of pivot, right? So at the end of the day, look, I have a new norm. Everyone on the panel has a new norm, and your hundreds of listeners have new norms. We have to pivot well because they need to see us doing that. But in reality, I think your boys are showing you, they're pivoting okay. I mean, I didn't realize that my new morning routine would involve playing NBA 2K20 with my 11-year-old. We've built a team. We're taking dudes online. We got housed by 24 the other day, and we won this morning, by 18. But it's a way for us to bond And with that, and I know Ernesto will probably pick up on this too, is you got to meet the kids where they are, right? You know, you cannot ask them to be adults. It's not fair. When my 8-year-old says, "Hey, Daddy, can I have a play date with Cooper?" Nah, my man, we can't do that today. We'll do it one day. It just won't be today. And we've got to figure out what that new norm looks like. What does post COVID-19 leadership look like for folks in the family as well as in the workplace?
Hey, listen, Jeffrey Vargas on Found Translation. Let's get Ernesto Mejia in this conversation. Ernesto, let's just jump in, brother. You know, I'm gonna give y'all the floor because your children are a little different stage. Obviously, you have a new baby, Xiomara. I mean, God bless that that beautiful blessing we just all had.
Thank you, bro.
And then the other children, which you're gonna introduce to us later in the show, are young adults. I mean, let's keep it real. They're in a different stage. So what kind of support do they need? Because the stage they're at, that's social interaction with their friends, their social network. And these are the golden days, you know what I mean? Early college, late high school. So I know that they have disappointments and questions on a whole other level.
Yeah, well, their lives are flipped upside down. I just read recently, this is their 9/11. This is this generation's 9/11, so to speak, these kids. And what we forget a lot of the times is, while we love to criticize youth about not being able to interact or to have discussions one-on-one, face-to-face, because they're always on their devices, which isn't far off. They are on their devices often. They do interact. They do need that social interaction. They do need to actually see what it's like to be outside of the house and struggle, survive, do what they need to do, obviously, to get ahead. But I will tell you, probably the biggest challenge has been, on top of the fact that they don't get to go back to school right now and for a while, it's the fact that they have to now stay confined to their homes. And that's something that a lot of teens just are not used to. And, we'll use my son as an example, a college freshman at the University of Kansas. You're talking about, I just gained my liberty. I'm just able to do my own thing, hang out, live on my own, figure things out. And let's rewind and go back to how it was, because he's stuck here with me right now. He came here to Florida for spring break, and they just said, don't go back home. So I think that the most difficult challenge is understanding that. And it's not just another typical day where, like Jeffrey said, you get to yell at them about not picking up the trash, not doing all these other things, not, being proactive, not exercising, not moving, which my son will be the first to tell you, that's a daily for him. He gets a regular dosage from me of, the things that I want him to do, where I want him to pick up, the things that I think he could be doing. But I think the part that Jeffrey kind of touched upon is, we also get to discover the resiliency that these kids have, the knowledge that they have, the understanding that they have. Trust me when I tell you that they see their parents stressing right now about paying the bills, going back to work, understanding the dangers of an infection, understanding the dangers of, can I hang out with my friends, as Jeffrey said? Well, no. And it's very difficult when they're used to, but why not? This is a regular thing for me. And on top of it, we'll touch upon this later. You're talking about a generation, meaning like the pre-Ks through, we'll call it 3rd, 4th grade, that are used to only learning in person. Maybe they'll have a tablet or something, some of them. But now you're telling them, all right, it's just going to be on paper. And for some of you, maybe it'll be with some online components. And that's a total different world for them. It really is. I'll tell you one thing right now, parents are appreciating teachers and educators a lot more by the second. And everyone's like, I'll pitch in to give them a raise. Well, we should have been singing those praises a long time ago.
Well,
we should have pitched in a long time ago.
I mean, look, the reality is a lot of us we're becoming teachers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's another layer to this. So you listen, Ernesto Mejia on Found Translation. Ernesto, the other thing I wanted to ask you about was related to, there's so many things. I think that the just thinking about trauma with our young people. And one of the things that I think is particularly acute, and I want people to understand from a Latino perspective, is that there's so many additional layers that, look, a lot of our kids, and even to some degree our children, are privileged enough not to be dealing with.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's something like 40% of Latino workforce, some huge percentage of our community, they don't have the option to go to, they're essential workers. They're people that are cleaning these office buildings. They're working at supermarkets.
They're feeding us, picking the fruits and vegetables.
They're feeding us, right? We have a huge chunk of our population that still has the trauma from Puerto Rico, whether it's still on the island or now that, I mean, there's kids, if you think about it, that grew up on the island a few years ago that have lost in between all this nonsense, like almost 2 years of school. You know, so talk, Ernesto, about that. And I don't even have to get into the mixed status families or undocumented population. I mean, that's a whole other set of stresses. So talk to us about those kids that are dealing with these extra layers of stress that they see their parents going through. How do we support those kids that are even in more delicate situations?
Well, a lot of the times it's easier said than done, because it's easy to give the lip service and say, okay, sit down and have a conversation. Let me tell you the reality of a lot of those conversations. The student, the child, the youth, they're tuned out as soon as you say, sit down and let's talk. Like, really? Like, is this going to be another one of those family meeting type things? And on top of it, they're going to have their device. So every other family is going to talk about, okay, hey, put the phone down for a minute. We need to talk. It's serious. You get the eye rolls, and then you get the, okay, I'm going to pretend to listen. But sometimes it's not just about talking, right? Sometimes it's about listening. Instead of explaining, you know, what do you think is going on? You know, from your perspective, what does this coronavirus thing mean to you? You know, I'm curious, now that you're not able to go to school, what do you think about that? How do you feel about that? You know, I'm wondering, are you concerned for your friends, for your relatives? What have you heard? Because we already know between social media, the news, TV, print, it's all negative. The deaths, it's almost like a race, who has more infected, who has more deaths. And those great stories that Mr. Rogers always tells us to look out for, we're not talking about them. And that's our job, to talk about that with them. What should we do in this time? How can we support in this time? How can we be, you know, good citizens? Do you think it's responsible for us to keep on going out? Why not? So instead of just talking, I think it's a good time to listen. And I will tell you right now, it's going to be a challenge for some families, because you're going to try to talk to your 15-year-old, and it's the first time you wanted to sit down and have a serious talk with your 15-year-old.
This is how deep my buddies are here. I'm gonna cede the floor because I want y'all two to have this conversation. Ernesto, continue the conversation with Jeff for a moment, because people need to hear this wisdom and bring. This is a very tragic thing on so many levels. We know that globally, not just the United States, but God brings us these moments. And I really believe that. I know you brothers believe that, you know, there's these silver linings. We got to be listening now to our higher power, or wherever that because there's lessons all around us that we can listen to. So you guys just jump in this conversation and keep it going and share some nuggets with us, please.
Yeah.
Sure. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Well, I just want to, you know, commend you. I think you're exactly right on point, man. If there's one thing that we can all do a better job at, is listening. And I think in fact, I would say that, you know, one possible analogy we can talk to our kids about is, you know, kids, they like to take you know, vacations, and sometimes we get in the car, we jump in the car and we go forward, right? And we know we can go where we need to go because if we think of each of our tires as a leadership competency, we know we're able to get where we need to go because we've got the right equipment.
Right.
And I think, and you can tell me if you agree with this, Ernesto, but we've got to like sort of change the tires out a little bit. We got to check them to see where we got some leaks. We got to add some air where we need some air. And we got to really, I think, and tell me if you agree with this, we got to give our kids 4 leadership competencies that they now have to have in a post-COVID-19 world.
Right.
And you know, amongst those, I think we really have to not only be empathetic toward them, but we've got to help them be empathetic toward their friends and others that they encounter as well. This isn't about, you know, stuff that they've gotten. They've got to move forward on. You got to give before you get. You got to offer before you ask.
No, absolutely. And I think this time right now is one that parents, not necessarily teens, because we were there, but parents, we've been craving and crying about having this opportunity. Obviously not with the financial burdens, much less the scare of disease. However, we have the opportunity to build a different relationship with our children. We can do simple, fun activities that cost zero. You know, I had a coworker of mine who just put up on social media, like, hey, if your kid's into drawing, check it out. There's a site here. You know, there's all kinds of things that we're discovering virtually. But on top of it, you know, what if we just each created a 10-question quiz for one another? How did you
Sweet.
get here? What were you like when you were in my shoes? You know, what was life like where you grew up? You know, did this ever happen to you? Was there anything that ever happened, you know, this serious or this, you know, big of a deal? Guess what? Maybe you get to talk about 9/11. Maybe you get to talk about what you were like as a student, but it's a way to connect. And the importance behind that for us is the research shows us that those students that are familiar with their family history and their backgrounds tend to do better in school. They're more involved in school, and they appreciate things a little bit more because they understand the struggles that did or didn't happen, but at least the family history and why they need to push a little bit harder.
You know, you're exactly right. My mom moved in with us recently, the first week in February. She's 87 years old. And to your point, we did a little bit of that. We're calling them AMAs, ask me anything, right?
Nice.
And so when you ask an 87-year-old something, you're going to get an answer.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be an extensive one.
Today, we asked Mom, I said, you know, Mom, when were you the coldest in your life? And she said, Mijo, it's very easy. I mean, you know, it's 1947.
Yeah.
You know, I was a teenager. I moved from Puerto Rico. We moved to New York. And I said, why were you so cold? I didn't have a coat.
Yeah.
Now we wait a minute for a second, and we just cleaned out a closet. I'd say we had no less than probably 15, maybe 20 coats in there.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, when Grandma says, "Hey, we didn't have a coat," wait a minute. Now we're connecting to a family history that demonstrates what? Triumph over struggle. Resiliency. It demonstrates we already have resiliency. Exactly, my man. Absolutely. Exactly.
No, and it's great for them to know those things because you know what? And Collazo, as I call him, Ray, brought this up as a Latinos. Sometimes we like to hide those stories from our families. We don't want them to struggle. We don't want them to know the pain that we went through. We don't want them to know the challenges we went through. When I found out some of the challenges my parents went through, man, I was like, man, I need to do something with my life. I've been slipping big time. I'm tired because I had to work an 8.5-hour day. And my parents worked 3 jobs. Come on, man. So it's important to know those things, and it's important to pull the curtain sometimes. I'm not saying completely and say everything, but you can't expect your child to learn how to have an adult conversation if we keep on talking to them like a little baby and they're already in their first, second years of college.
Right. Because it's not just stuff in our past, it's stuff in our present we're embarrassed to talk about.
Oh, for sure. No, for sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't have it all together, no question about it. Sulaih, you know, I always tease people on the show that when they watch Found in Translation, they need to bring their notepad.
That's right.
To write down notes, because we're schooling people out here on Found in Translation. We're going to get back to Ernesto and Jeffrey in a second. And our other wonderful guests, we got a whole lineup for you on this show to support our children. We're going to hear from those young people in a moment, and an educator that's in the classroom and now has to transition. And some other special guests. Sulaih transitions to the next segment. I think you've got Sulaih is doing some news updates on this episode of Found in Translation.
Right.
So catch us up. What's going on in the news, my friend?
So you just want to remind you are watching and listening to Ray Collazo, Sulaih Picorelli, and the Found in Translation family talk show. If you are watching live, please leave your questions and comments down below for our experts on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube Live, and we will read them right on the show. So as you probably heard, the U.S. Senate passed the CARES Act, a $2 trillion stimulus relief package. The Senate passed the legislation that will include direct payments, expanded unemployment insurance, a freeze on mortgage default and rental evictions, as well as a $500 billion loan program for big businesses and $360 billion for small businesses. It's expected that the House of Representatives will have this on the president's desk by Friday for signature. So Ray, you know, what do you believe people need to know about the CARES Act, and how is it going to solve our economic crisis due to COVID-19?
Well, it's interesting because the president is kind of more focused on the economy, to the point where people like Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick of Texas are like, well, if we'd rather lose some wouldn't old people rather just die or have a bad economy for their grandkids? So these people are out of pocket big time. I'll keep my loved ones, my friend. Thank you. I mean, look, this is the bottom line. It's like anything in your life. You put off problems, and then you end up spending more money. It becomes a bigger pain at the end because you avoided it in the beginning. And that's the fundamental mismanagement of this situation. Now we have to invest, and we'll see if it works, $2 trillion, which is 10% of our economy. And it's interesting how Republicans used to be about fiscal conservatives and socialism, and that's $2 trillion of socialism here. But the bottom line is that, the Democrats fought for as good a deal as we could get in the House. So the fact that we have essentially, if you got laid off during this process or furloughed, you're going to have basically more or less the salary you were making when you were working. And it's very important. The small businesses, there's programs, sort of forgiveness loans that'll be forgiven as long as you keep your employees there. It's really important that our folks out there, our nonprofits, are going to have similar access to that credit line. So it's really important that our folks, and we're going to continue to share this information because, there's a lot of details. So we want to make sure people get their money, whether it's through grant programs or through direct payments. So for example, if you have loved ones in your life, especially the elderly or the people that are, maybe collecting SSI or have very little income that would be eligible for this money, but they got to do their taxes. So people who maybe don't, the seniors in our life and the people that are just sort of scraping by, or the college kids that don't bother doing their taxes, they got to do their taxes because then they'll be eligible for these payments. So there's a lot of information like that we're going to be sharing the coming weeks on the show. But the bottom line is that if we had let these people, they literally wanted to write a $500 billion blank check to Trump. What would he have done that money? He would have pocketed it. So these elections matter, my friends. So it's very important, and we'll see how it helps the economy. And again, the health system is also, I wish they had given more money to our health systems. The other people that are really struggling right now, much respect to our first responders. Let's get Jeff and Ernesto back in this conversation before Sulaih introduces another member of the family, our very special guest who had a real harrowing experience recently. Jeff, give us another nugget, man. What's the spiritual lesson for your children, Jeff, in this process?
Oh man, no, this is probably the deepest and most impactful lesson for all of us. I'm just going to be very real. We're big believers, and at the end of the day, sometimes you hear words like "you'll never be," God's never going to forsake us or leave us. And we look at stories of the children of Israel, man, wandering around for years and years before they're brought to a promised land. And so this whole experience asks us to be very, very real, authentic, and transparent about this phraseology. Either you believe what's said or you don't. And if you don't, you better have a good reason. You better have some proof positive as to why not. Because we've got a whole boatload of information telling us about God not leaving us. And look, all things work together for him who believe in God and stay true to his purpose. And the reality is we don't know where this is going, but we do know who's taking us there. Every morning, and I'd encourage all of you to do this too, we start off with listening to some worship music. I got a buddy who teaches middle school during this normal time phrase, and he's given a little worship service, man. And you listen to him sing his heart out. You give yourself the opportunity to figure out how you're going to be transformed through this process to be better for three entities. 1, yourself. 2, your family. And 3, a community that you've not yet been in touch with. Because whatever kind of test we're going through, the truth of the matter is we're all going through something. You go through those tests. It's not cliche. It's so that you have a testimony for somebody going forward. And so I don't want my kids, look, I told them we don't walk in a spirit of fear. We walk in a spirit of faith. And at the end of the day, that guy's taking care of us through 1,001 activities. He's going to take care of us again. And as a parent, man, there's no greater responsibility than we have than to actually live out our faith for our kids, to give them a chance to experience it, because we don't know what their world is going to look like going forward, but we know someone is going to help them get through it.
Ernesto, at Cool Speak, you have one of the nations, for my money, one of the nation's real cutting edge educational consulting firms that engage, motivate, inspire disadvantaged youth, many of which are Latino, but you work with kids all over the country. And I'm curious, Ernesto, from like a Colby's perspective, thinking about all these kids that you're connected with all over the country, I'm sure they're reaching out to you on social media. I'm sure you're finding more creative ways to keep connected to this incredible network of young people that you've cultivated. So just any thoughts from like a Colspeak perspective? How are you connected to these young people, and any thoughts you'd like to share about that part of the journey?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the cool things that my business partner and I, Carlos Ojeda Jr., shout out to Chu. I think he's listening in with the fam. So shout out to the Ojedas.
Are you kidding? He's fanboying you on Facebook, brother.
You have to adapt to the times. So you can't just sit there and say, you know what, as a company, we hope the government gives us some bailout money for our company and we'll just sit here and ride it out. If you're doing that, then you don't truly believe in the work that you're doing and you're not really about it. So we immediately started, figuring things out. What can we do? So we're actually transitioning to online classes for our students, for our parents, and for the professionals that serve them. As a matter of fact, starting next month, to show to the proof in the pudding, once a week, we'll be providing one free session that can go out to anybody and everybody, because there is no reason for people not to see or hear something that's uplifting, that's inspiring, that's motivating. When you have people that, like, our boy Zach that wrestled in the WWE with one leg, our boy Joaquin, who you already know is a beast, world champion of spoken word. We have team members that want to give back and do something beneficial. And here's the big thing that we're not talking about. We try to help our instructors prepare for teaching online all of a sudden. One of my friends from Louisville, Dr. Brooms, and I just had this conversation. He said, Ernesto, but who helped the students prepare for this? Some students, sure, they had the like my daughter, she might say, for snow days, they had an online course that they were already doing, so they didn't have snow days and have to make up days. But others, and then when you're talking about the challenges and staying connected with the youth, pretty soon here, I'm working on it right now, we'll put a resource guide together for educators, parents, and everybody to understand from the youth's perspective some of the challenges. You'd be surprised when you hear the youth themselves say, I'm discovering that I learn a lot better when there's an adult in the classroom and I can ask them a question. I didn't realize that there were so many distractions in my home. I didn't understand when people talked about the digital divide until we're all home trying to get our homework done, and we realize we have one or two laptops. All of these things are coming to light, and these are issues that sometimes we forget about. And, we have to keep current too, and it's what we try to do. I was talking to another coworker, and some universities might change their admission rules. So, for example, those higher tier ones, they're probably going to let you slide a little bit more. Others, they're not even asking for the SAT or ACT this year. Most states, they're going to get rid of state-mandated testing because of what's happening. And we need to understand that. But more importantly, we need to listen to our youth to improve the education that we're trying to give them online and in person in our homes. And so I'm very lucky and fortunate that we get to develop something for our parents as well.
Well, it's interesting because you say that, because my oldest, who's 10, Troy, he's really gravitated. I think he prefers this because the online piece gives him, there's a certain structure to it that he really likes. And so everyone's got a different style though. But it's all about paying attention and adaptation. Sulaih, we're going to get back in a moment to the education conversation. We're going to bring a teacher that's now dealing with the transition of sort of not being in the classroom, as well as Ernesto's children are going to come on, the older ones, to give us a real life experience, what some of these young people are going through during the COVID season here from an education and personal perspective. But Sulaih, we got a crazy story that's part of the family that we wanted to share as part of the Founding Translation community.
Absolutely. We want to welcome to the show Albert Vargas, whose family was stuck for days due to COVID-19 before escaping Ecuador to get back to his home in Florida. Welcome to Founding Translation, Albert. Welcome home.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I'm really excited, really enjoying the conversation right now. Some powerful themes are going through the show right now. All of those things, we had to apply it at one point or another during our ordeal in Ecuador. Talking about faith, having faith in a higher power and the ability to understand, hey, we are going to get back home. We're going to make it. Being able to talk to your kids about what's happening, empathize with them, being able to teach them in teachable moments, about compassion and understanding and just being patient as well. Our kids have a tendency to run out of patience, especially when they're trapped in a hotel where you can't get out because you're quarantined. For the entire city is quarantined and sequestered. You have to find creative ways to interact with them beyond just devices and video games. You got to figure out how to play tag with them, maybe a couple of roll up a paper ball into a trash can, throw it into a trash can. Hey, that's our version of basketball, right? So really enjoying the show.
So Albert, so let's reverse it for a second to give people a breakdown. So you and your family were on vacation in Ecuador.
Yes.
And then you weren't able to get out. So just really quickly, just sort of the politics of that and give people a sense of the timeline.
Sure. So we left Thursday night. Everything, we checked our travel advisories. The only travel advisory that was out at that point, which was, I think, March 11th to 12th, was watch out for landslides in Ecuador, which, by the way, we did experience one on our travel to trying to go from town to town.
This is like Raiders of the Lost Ark.
It's kind of funny you say that, because at one point I told my wife, I said, I don't care if we have to get out of here on a cargo airplane full of chickens. We're getting out of here, right? But the only travel advisory that we have received was one for landslides. There was no mention of COVID, COVID being rampant or anything like that. That was Thursday night. By Sunday, as you well know, the Trump had already the agency had already declared an emergency, and things really took a nosedive after that. We started getting notifications of the airplane, all the airlines being canceled, all of the, all the businesses were shutting down. And by Wednesday, we were already trying to garner a flight back home. My son has medical needs, and we only had a limited supply of medicine that we could take on vacation. So we started trying to call the airlines, trying to call the embassy, trying to get in contact with whoever we could get in contact with to get us a plane out of the country. In the meantime, the country was bringing down more and more restrictions on us. Everything from traveling outside of the province that you were in to how many people can gather in a group, all of those things.
Sulaih, jump in. I know you're real intrigued by this. How did my man escape with the family? Because it's one thing to go through this by yourself, but
how old are the kids too?
Jump in there. It was your wife and how many children, Albert, were with you?
So it was the entire party was 9 people. So it was me, my wife, 3 boys, and then my brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and their 2 children.
Wow. So
how long were you stuck? How many days total were you stuck? And what did you guys do? How to manage?
So we traveled the 12th. We started seeing things going downhill on Monday the 16th. We started we got the notifications of cancellation like on the 17th. And from then on, all the way up through that Sunday, we were trying to make phone calls, trying to push the embassy. I have to say that, one of the things that we're trying to actively teach our children, and that we use this as a very teachable moment, was to be grateful for all the help and the family that advocated for us, that pushed for us. My wife's mother, she went on Channel 7 News and she raised a ruckus in the media. And soon after that, we started getting phone calls back from the embassy. We started getting phone calls from others that, they were saying, hey, we have available seats on this charter. We're able to book you. We're able to get you out. So we were, we have to be very grateful, and all the love and support that was shown by us, not only stateside, but our fellow Americans that are still trapped there in
Yeah.
Ecuador. That they were
Yeah,
still
Albert,
waiting.
I wanted you to note that because you one of the things, the message you wanted to share with our Found in Translation community about your journey is there's not only Americans stuck in Ecuador, but you estimate, I think I heard an estimate of about 1,500 U.S. citizens are somewhere in Latin America in limbo. So I know you wanted to bring that to awareness to the show.
Absolutely, absolutely. There are, at least in the compound that we were staying at, there were at least 16 Americans. We started there was a Facebook group that was started called Americans Stranded in Ecuador. There's been hundreds of messages there going through there. That's been a lifeline for Americans trying to communicate out to the rest of the world what's going on, what airlines are finally flying in, what airlines are not flying in. Tickets are being canceled, rescheduled, and there are, from the top of my head, at least 50 that are still in Ecuador. I know that the embassy has finally started moving and turning those wheels to get them home. But there are many more across South America. I have a co-worker of mine, his daughter was trapped in Peru as of last Saturday, and she was trapped with other volunteers in an abandoned hotel, and they couldn't even come out of the hotel because the military was on the street arresting whoever was coming out of that hotel. So there are a lot of Americans still stuck abroad. The wheels are turning very slowly, which, I'm really surprised at the fact that we don't have some sort of emergency plan for when a pandemic or some sort of global emergency happens, how to quickly get back Americans.
Yeah,
right?
no, there's
back.
this situation is exposing a lot of holes in our system from a health perspective, immigration perspective, as well as, sort of travel and making sure that our Americans abroad and take care of. Albert Vargas, not only are you a brother of mine because you're just brother, so we're family. So best to you.
Yes, sir.
And as a Philly guy, I always appreciate the beard game. So, if you got the beard,
indeed,
you can always hang with us, brother. So really appreciate
you got
brother.
it.
Thank you so much for joining the show and safe travels. Please keep us posted how we can support our Americans that are dealing with this terrible, incredible situation. Jeffrey, as we wrap up this Vargas segment of the show, brother, a final word from you. We want to get to our the other educators that are on the queue, but just some final thoughts from you, Jeffrey, to our families, our children, and during this incredible period.
Yeah, two things come to mind real quick with respect to that. The first is, in order for you to do a great job taking care of your kids, you got to do an even better job of taking care of yourself. So be very intentional about where you look for some spiritual hope, some guidance, some inspiration. I would encourage you to dig deep there. And the second, that's the get part. The second is the give part. I'm going to challenge everybody who's watching tonight to go through their phone and find those individuals who work in the healthcare field. I think the terminology that I've been utilizing recently, and in fact, I talked with an executive from a cancer institute last night, and I said, everybody talks about first responders, but y'all are life responders. And so I'm going to challenge everybody that's listening tonight to scroll through your phone, find the life responders, those who are in healthcare in one way or another, frontline worker or some support area, and just reach out to them, text them, and call them and let them know that you appreciate the work that they're doing, and that their work, two things. One, it doesn't go unnoticed and it's not unappreciated. You appreciate what they're doing and you want to connect with them, give them a little hope and inspiration, seek the right kind of hope and inspiration. And like Ernesto was saying, with his company and my company, we're pivoting as well. We got 31 leadership programs we're putting online that we had in person, and we're going to be able to provide folks who need it. Anybody who's listening that connects with you, Ray, we'll give folks leadership competencies for the workplace post COVID-19. we'll provide that to folks. But again, forward we go in a brighter light than where we've been.
Jeffrey,
God
brother.
bless, my brother.
Yeah, I mean, you're a good brother, man. You know, you're one of my spiritual big brothers, and as a public service, I've been talking to other, offline. We've been talking about
Hmm.
doing a show on the weekend or Friday night. The ladies are into these virtual happy hours.
Yeah.
My wife might be upstairs right now on Zoom sipping on a Chardonnay. I don't know. It's unconfirmed rumor, but the guys need something. So I think we need to bring back Latino sports talk one of these Friday nights and just talk smack about whatever basketball, man. The stuff we used to enjoy. Jeffrey Vargas, brother, Generationology. Keep us posted with everything you're doing, brother. You'll be back very soon to keep spitting that knowledge. Ernesto, this has
Talk
been
to
a
me,
great
brother.
episode. We got to transition. We got to keep it moving. You're going to introduce some very special guests in a second, but I wanted to bring, we couldn't have this show without a teacher. Someone
Yeah.
that not only is a mother, but someone that's in the classroom every day supporting our children, and she's taught from high school to the little ones. And you got to have the A-listers when you have a show like this. So always great to have Eva Mendez back in the building.
Yeah.
What's up, Eva?
Hi, Ray. How are you?
Good, good, good. Eva was a part of those USA Chilla East Coast college leadership events back in the day. So may have been in a talent show or two, Eva. So we're all connected one way or another. Eva, let people know how you're handling this. You're a school teacher on the East Coast, and just share with us your experience during this transition. Now that the schools physically are closed, but you still trying to do your thing as a teacher.
Yeah, it's been a little rough. Again, I think that Ernesto hit the nail right on the head when he said that we didn't prepare our students to go remote. So they are having a hard time understanding how to learn on their own without having a teacher in front of them. You did mention that I have taught from kindergarten to adults, but now I'm actually teaching alternative school, and we're having a really hard time with our alternative population. They need that one-on-one. They need a person in front of them guiding them step by step, and we're losing them, and we're fearing as a district that we are going to lose them in this pandemic.
So share with us how are they going to school? Is it all online? How are they
Okay.
getting access? So share with us the mechanics of what's happening right now, and what are you doing day to day? How are you teaching them online?
All right. So I'll tell you the timeline. Our timeline went very, very quickly. We were told on Monday that we needed to have a 2-week lesson plan, hard copy, submitted by Wednesday to go home with the students by Thursday. On Friday, we were told that they were going remote. So my students, luckily, I teach in the inner city, so we have to assume at that moment that not all of them have internet access. So every teacher gave them hard copies, but that only lasted for 2 weeks. Now that it has been extended past 2 weeks, we no longer can go back into the buildings to create another hard copy worth for 2 more weeks. So we had to go to this remote learning situation. At this point, I teach Spanish, so I was able to put them on a site that I can track and grade online so they can click in and I can see their progression. I can assign things online for them, but not everybody has that access, and it's been rough. As far as internet access goes, we can't assume that they all do have internet access,
Right.
even though they all have phones, but a lot of times their phones work primarily on internet. So unless they're in a situation where they have that internet access, that phone is pretty much a paperweight.
Yeah.
Um, Someone, I think Ernesto also mentioned about the fact that households are going from your internet you buy your internet, your price of your internet is based on how many computers it can withstand at one time. So now think of families with 2 and 3 children all trying to get on a tablet or on a phone.
Right.
The internet is not strong enough to hold all of these different uh, tablets and phones and computers. So now the internet is not working as
Right.
well. So as a teacher, are extending deadlines. So
Mm.
we submit something on Monday, we're giving them the whole entire week to submit it. So as long as they make contact and attempt something by the end of the week, we're grading it, and we're helping them as we go. We're telling them they can email us. We're actually giving up our phone numbers so they can text us. They can email us, text us, call us. Our school is actually working on an Instagram page and Facebook page, since that's what they tap into most, to see if they can even tap into the Instagram or Facebook page to ask questions or to even create some kind of a conversation to help each other.
Yeah. So Ernesto, you as a not only an educator but as a parent, share with people how you're addressing this. You've developed actually a tool to help your students in this transition period with sort of managing their time and sort of prioritizing how they can focus on this transition.
Yeah, so I shared a resource that we created already. It's basically a daily homeschooling suggestion, basically for our parents. So parents get to see what teachers go through on a regular now. Parents get to see what it's like to handle more than one child that doesn't listen. Parents get to see what it's like to tell a child, I need you to do this, and nobody moves. Welcome to the teacher's world. Welcome to a regular day. And Eva's probably, nodding her head over there because she sees it. But the resource that we created, I provided to you, Ray, so we can share with the audience. But I'd like to give some tips because I always think it's beneficial as part of the training that we're doing. So for our parents at home, here are 5 simple tips that I would recommend that you try to take into consideration. Number 1, your routines and your habits. There's a reason daycare centers work great. They're like little boot camp military for children. How come they know how to hang up their coat, wash their hands, push in their chair? When they get home, there is no routine. There are no habits. And for those of us that don't realize it, 40% of your day is composed of habits. So that's 1. Number 2, screen time. So if you think your youth, your teens average screen time is what the average is right now, which is like 7.5 hours, I'm probably going to lowball it at 10 to 11 hours. And when you say, well, no, not my child, they're not doing that, they're probably going to be on for a good 4 or 5 hours while you're asleep and you don't even realize it. And then you're wondering why they can't get up early. So screen time, you can monitor it and go old school. You know what? If you want to get your device back in the morning, you make your bed, you brush your teeth, you do your chores, and you're going to give me 30 minutes of straight homework, nothing else. Simple. And then you can get your device. You've earned it. Yeah, and you can earn your device back. Shared household chores, things that you can do at home. If we're trying to create independent, critical thinking children, which is the goal, then let's not tell them what they need to do every 3 minutes of the day. Did you brush your teeth? Did you make your bed? Did you put your clothes away? Did you pick up this? Did you put the trash away? Let them know what they need to do in advance. And if they don't, there's consequences. That's how it should be. The schooling, here's, I don't know, Eva, and you can chime in on this. It's going to vary. Some schools will give you enough work to be doing at home for the majority of the school day hours. Some don't. So I just want parents to know the realistic expectation. Don't expect your child to be doing schoolwork like if they were in school from 8 to 2:30. That's not realistic. If they give you 2 or 3 hours, that's good, but they need to be productive hours without distractions. Eva, I don't know if you want to chime in on that.
Yeah, it's funny because Ray tells me all the time, like I chime in as a parent as well as a teacher. Once you remove the student from the school day, really the amount of hours that they're learning is not 6 to 8 hours. They're not learning for 6 to 8 hours. So once they become remote, they're not on a computer for 6 to 8 hours. I know with my own child, I'm really in tuned in his education. He's a senior now, and his teachers are really good at chiming in with me, so I know what's kind of going on at the same time. But it takes him a good 2 to 3 hours to get through a 6 to 8 hour school day.
Yeah,
and he can do it in 2 to 3 hours because he doesn't have to go from class to class. They don't have to take attendance. They don't have to weed out they don't 40 minutes. They don't do gym for 40 minutes. So they weed out a lot of those extrinsic things. So he is focused on schoolwork. And it's funny that you say routine. Routine is so, so, so important. And I have been the routine warden, not only in my classroom, but as a parent as well. My son knows when he wakes up, I mean, there is a routine he follows. And the other day he says to me, Mom, there's no school. Why are you waking me up at 9 o'clock in the morning? Boy, tomorrow I'm gonna wake you up at 8:30 in the morning because 9 o'clock, really on a regular basis, you'd be waking up at 6:15 in the morning to be at school. So consider this a gift. And he wakes up at 9 and he walks the dog and it's a routine. He walks the dog, he comes back, he brushes his teeth, does his, private business, and then he is literally on that computer. And it's funny because just a funny story as a parent, I swear he's not doing the work. So I said to him, I know you're not doing the work. I emailed his teachers, and every single teacher responded that he Yes, he has submitted all of his work. He is on speed or whatever. So it's like pat on the back on me.
Right, right, right.
Here I think I got him, but
Sure,
really
sure.
I know he is doing what he's supposed to be doing. So it was a proud moment for
Yeah,
myself. But again, if you keep those standards high, just because you're home doesn't mean that you're not learning. So just because you're not
right.
in school, you still follow the same routine. You know what your teachers expect
Yeah,
of you. Your teachers are sending you the work. I'm in tune. There is no escape. You have to get it done.
yeah. And then I'll just say the fifth one, Sulai, I'm sorry, before we wrap up, is family time. We've been craving this and talking about it, but are we really doing it? Meal prep time is a great time to talk to your child. While they're cutting the tomatoes, ask them some questions because they're not focused on where you going with this conversation. They're focused on, I don't want to lose a finger right now because I'm cutting these tomatoes. So I'm just going to answer. Game time, movie night, just sitting down and having conversations. Sorry, that's it.
I did want to, this is for the panel, anyone can answer. So let's talk about families, let's say, that haven't yet figured out what the new normal is. What advice do you have for, those parents so that we can start putting a routine or a habit together for our family?
Yeah, so I don't know if you remember, I mentioned about 40% of your day is built on habits. And it takes between 28 to 30 plus days. Some people 8 days, some people 60 days. It's going to vary. But you have to start with some simple, basic habits. There's a Admiral McRaven, I think's his name. He gave a commencement speech for UT Austin, I want to say, about how he became the success that he did by making his bed every day. And it can start with something that simple. You got to take baby steps. You can't expect if we've allowed our teenager to be on the phone for 11 hours a day, don't expect tomorrow for it to be 25 minutes all of a sudden. You have to wean them off. You have to change the rules. You have to change your habits, but it has to start with something small. And you know what? It's as simple as modeling the habit. You can't say sit down at the table and do homework and let me check my Facebook, my Instagram, watch TV while you're doing work. Model the habit, and that's a good way to start.
Eva?
I know for me, are we speaking the perspective as a parent or are we speaking perspective as a teacher?
No, as a parent, because really
Okay.
we want to help people, get something together for themselves and their families at home.
Right. So as a parent, routine, again, we set the word routine over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
We've also I've also emphasized in past shows as well, is that setting the stage, giving your child the stage, like don't let him barricade in his room.
Right.
I take away the power cord of a TV. I take away the phone.
Yeah.
Okay. So guess what? You don't have a TV as as an option right now. You don't have a phone as an option. So right now, the only option is to do your schoolwork. So
Mm.
guess what? Let's get this schoolwork done.
Yeah.
Also, parents need to check in with their with the school and the teachers. If you stay in the link with your teachers, I'm sorry, with your children's teachers, again, you will be in the link and you can in the mode and you can see what's going on and you can also facilitate your students as well. Also, journaling. We are in a pandemic in which
Yeah.
kids are
Yeah.
hearing words that they have never heard before. Have them Google those
Mhm.
words. Have them define those words. How use those words as a discussion as to, okay, well, how are you feeling? I know I teach alternative school, and one of the things that we do is temperature check. When I'm in this classroom, we ask that, well, what's your temperature right now? And they tell me, well, one would be they're having a great day. Five would be they have a horrible day. Ask them, well, why is it a five? Why is it a one? Why is it
Right.
a three? And what can we do to make that better? How can we make our three to a two? How can we make a five to a four? Those types of things. And have a question of the day. I've given my students a question of the day. And my last question of the day was, there are different people that are struggling through this crisis. Write a note to one of those students, giving them
Mm.
motivation. That was my
Yeah.
motivational Monday question. My
Cool.
son's school does random acts of kindness where he has to do some kind of
That's
random
great.
act of kindness. Again, even though they're not in the classroom, this is a great opportunity to show them social skills, show them humanity skills, things that in the classroom we
Right.
kind of forget to teach.
Absolutely. And you're
Thank
listening. I tell
Thank
you,
you, Eva.
you talk about going to school. We are schooling y'all here with our education experts and parents who care about these children so much. Eva Mendez, of course, the A-lister of Found in Translation, Eva Mendez, and Ernesto Mejia, one of my homies and a great friend, and of course, one of the leading educational consultants, motivational speakers in the country that engages our young people through Cool Speak. And Joe Heather's on the line. Christina Vega is in the chat, and I was remiss earlier, but we knew have it scrolling. One of the things that Christina Vega, who's our point person on domestic violence issues, and has founded our own organization, Love Shouldn't Hurt, has pointed out to us that we want to keep top of mind, and because so many people are in isolation now, predators and a lot of our battered partners, especially our battered women, are in even more peril. So we have the domestic violence hotline. You can actually text this number, 1-800-422-4453. If you're in a situation where you can't make a phone call to address the situation, if you know what I'm saying. So Sulaih, we're gonna skip the transition. We're gonna do it at the end of the show because I want to get some young people, some students into this conversation. But before we get into that, very quickly, we have to vet people on the show here, Eva and Sulaih. And the thing is, Eva, with all due respect, you're not the only A-lister here. So recently, the Latino TMZ found this lovely photo. Hold on, let me do this. Hold on. This is Ernesto with Bad Bunny, baby. Don't Benito.
Oh my goodness.
And Ernesto, I mean, you weren't practicing social distancing there, Ernesto.
We weren't. That was an awesome event for ASED scholarship, which shout out to ASED and McDonald's. They give out $500,000 in scholarships to Latino students. And that was a surprise visit by special guest Bad Bunny at a high school in Miami. So that was an awesome, awesome event.
Very nice. The other, with your frequent trips on the VIP carpet at the Latin Grammys, the J Balvin run-ins are always interesting to me. And sometimes you always have the same odd hair color. It's very interesting. Ernesto, brother, for this segment of the show, introduce these two young people and let's talk about why they're joining us today. We want to definitely hear from young people in this conversation.
Absolutely. So first, let me start off by saying this. As parents are beating themselves up because they wish they could do a better job. They wish that, they would yell as often. They wonder if they're doing a great job. I think these two guests will showcase that we've done a decent job. These are two of my three pride and joys. The other one's asleep now. My baby girl, Sofia Mejia, who is a sophomore and a star cheerleader at her school. My baby boy, my little one, who wants to make sure that I highlight this, my 6'4" son, Jorge
yes,
Mejia.
The small forward on Team Mexico, the 3-and-D we've always needed.
There's the backup over there at Kansas.
Colores, yes.
A freshman at the University of Kansas. These are my pride and joys that I'm very honored and happy to see them on tonight.
Wonderful. So Ernesto, we wanted to get Sofia and Jorge in this conversation. Let's start with you, Sofia. Ladies first, of course. You're a high school student. Obviously, I'm sure you're enjoying your time. The fall was coming. It was getting a little warmer. Cheerleading. I mean, just what a great time to be a young person, right? And then this happens. So share with people what this has been like. School's closed. You're going to school at home. Share with us what this experience has been like over the last few weeks.
For me, it's been very boring, honestly, not being able to go out or just hang out with people, because this week would have been my spring break and I would have been in Florida with my dad and with a friend as well. So it's been very boring and it was very random to just be sitting here at home all day. So it has not been very fun for me.
Talk about how was the academic experiences like? Are you going to school online? Did they give you a bunch of paperwork on? Are you communication with any of your teachers? Tell us. And you're in the Chicagoland area, correct? So
yeah.
This is in Illinois, the Midwest, which is now becoming, unfortunately, sort of the next set of hot spots. Detroit and Chicago, it came out today. So you have to definitely stay inside, my friend. So share with us what your day is like now as a student.
For me, it's actually really easy because, like my dad mentioned earlier, we had a plan in place for snow days, which is e-learning. So it had been talked about a lot already. And then when this came up, it was just like how we would treat a snow day. So we just log into school and then all of our teachers have our work posted for us. And then we just do the work and it doesn't take that long. It's not that much work. We just have to log in between 9 and 11 a.m. And then we can do our work at whatever time we want.
Sophia, for young people around the country, especially young women in sort of high school, what's your message to them? I mean, I know it's, socializing and learning about yourself is just as important, if not more important than the schoolwork, right? I mean, let's keep it real. But now with this isolation, right? I mean, so just what's your message around how we keep our sanity here during this time? It's gotta be challenging.
Yeah, for me, I've honestly been trying to like focus on myself since my schoolwork doesn't take that much time and I can't really do anything else. I've been just hanging out with myself, thinking, and just trying to like learn more about myself now that I have the free time to do so.
Let's get your big guy Ernesto in this conversation, the rim runner.
That's
Jorge,
right.
you're a freshman at Kansas. I know it
Yes,
must have been tough to come back home, man, because you were living a good life on a big, beautiful state campus there.
Yeah.
So tell us about your experience, how they shut things down, and how the rest of your semester is going to go here.
It's just another transition, especially for being a freshman in college, going into a big independent leap and then coming back home and being back with your parents in a really unprecedented way kind of catches you off guard. And then being thrown with online classes is a different mixture. So you're kind of getting a lot of curveballs at once that you have to stay on your toes for. You have to adapt and be ready for them so that you don't fall behind on what's important, your grades or your mental well-being. You got to manage both of those with all these curveballs coming at you.
Ernesto, what's the lesson? Share with us another lesson that you've learned about how your children, who obviously are very well adjusted, very mature for their age, are handling this situation that you wanted to share with our Found in Translation community.
Yeah, so sometimes, and this is tough to say in front of them because they don't see it, much less believe it sometimes because you're dad, but they know what they need to do. They're much more responsible and mature than we give them credit for. Doesn't mean that they know everything, they have all the answers, but they do. And it's difficult as a parent to allow them to understand that and see that, but it's true. But we both have to communicate on both sides. And I will say, for those of you that are fortunate enough to have all of your children, all your parents around you, take advantage of them, because it's important. It sucks.
Yeah, no, the physical distance is difficult, and we're dealing with that on so many levels. Ernesto, I know you're getting emotional because you're not with everyone all the time, and I'm only probably about a 45-minute drive from my mom and my dad. They're not together, but they're pretty close to each other physically. My mom's with one of my brothers, and the sadness I go through is knowing they're going to be okay. We're going to be okay, but I may not see them for another month, another 6 weeks, like physically. And then you get to the point, like, at what point do you roll the dice and go see them? Or, like, I mean, absolutely. Like, it's not today, it's not tomorrow, but in 10 days, it may be tough to stay cooped up. And just that, it's just the idea of not seeing them is as crazy as, so.
And that's a big challenge too, I think, so that we need to keep in mind. My kids are used to socializing, hanging out, especially Sophia. She is the queen bee at socializing and making friends and being out there with her fellow cheerleaders and whatnot. And it's a drastic change. And we need to keep that in mind with our kids because I hate to say this, but rarely are any of our kids going to get up and say, you know what, I'm feeling a little down. I'm concerned. I'm sad. I miss this. I miss that. They don't. And they lash out in different ways, how they act, how they communicate, or how they don't communicate. So let's keep that in mind as well, because while we're stressing out as parents about the bills and what's going on, they're also stressing out about school, learning in a different way, and not being able to hang out with their friends. So let's cut them some slack as well.
I wanted to bring Eva Mendez back in this conversation as a teacher because I know you also are a mother of a teenager. So your son is very relatable to this crowd. If they all lived in the same place, they'd all be hanging out. And that the word that hit me in this conversation was Sophia said boredom.
Oof.
She's used to doing so many things, got a sharp mind. So Eva, talk to us about that. These young people, they got us. My little one, my 10-year-old, he has to do a PowerPoint for he's better at PowerPoint than I am. He's whipping my butt. I'm like, you need to help me with my stuff. My branding. So talk to us. How do we help these young people? Because they do have they got a lot going on and they have so much to share. And how do we minimize that boredom? Because that's real.
I will say, Ray, I have students that I go to for my PowerPoints work. They're just so amazing at it. I mean, we are teaching. It's hard for us now because we're teaching the era of like technology. So they are literally they come out the womb with a laptop or what they call it tablet in their hand, so they know how to use them very very quickly. My son, actually, I haven't seen my son with is a very much of a homebody. So he's actually embracing this better than most because he does like to stay home, and he has connected with his friends virtually. So whether it be gaming or whether it be FaceTime or whether it be on the phone or whether it be through the Zoom or whatever, he has been able to link up with his friends. But it's only been a week for him, a little over a week for him. So I don't know how that will continue. But as far as right now, he doesn't have any concerns when it comes to that because he loves being home and unbothered. I know that if it was me, I'm right now as an adult. It's hard for me. Like I'm literally like climbing the walls. It's been
It's
this
tough.
is I'm finishing about day 12 right now. I'm finishing day 12 for me. I miss my friends. We do FaceTime, but I miss them. We are creatures of touch. Like we need to, and we're creatures of interaction. So we do need to interact with our friends. We do need to touch them. It needs to be real. So I do miss my friends. I do miss my family. So I mean, it's hard. I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine like the social butterflies, what they're going through. I do know right now as a senior, my son, the thing that is teetering right now is prom and graduation. They have been waiting for 18 years to have a prom and a graduation, and
It's
that right
tough.
now is on the borderline of being canceled. And
Yeah.
like he's been waiting for this, and I feel bad because my son's school actually has a junior senior prom. So when he was a junior, we had this discussion, and we decided together that we're not going to go as a junior because we're going to ruin it as a senior. Well, now it's senior year and it might be ruined, so he might never have that experience of a prom. He might not ever have that experience as a graduate, as walking in that rite of passage of graduation. So it's hard. I mean, it's really hard. I mean, I don't even know how else to put it. Like it's just really hard.
Yeah. Jorge, wanted to give you an opportunity. Any messages you have for either college students around the country or young people do you want to share about this experience, or just kind of how you're thinking about this whole bigger situation? Because I'm sure you have ideas on the politics of it. Obviously, we're all concerned for the health situation. So anything else you wanted to share to our audience in the Founding Translation community about how you're feeling around the coronavirus season?
Yeah, definitely. I think that it was the right decision to pull everybody out of in-person classes and switch to online. I think COVID-19 just keeps spreading. You know, the US just became the most infected country in the world, just passing China and Italy. And with those online classes comes a big problem for a lot of students. A friend of mine pointed something out saying that, especially for me as an out-of-state student, I'm not paying out-of-state tuition to take online classes at home for myself. You know, that's not the type of learning that I signed up for. That's not the loans that I took out on. That's not the dorming fees that I paid for. There's a lot of money that I put in to go out of state at the University of Kansas that I'm not sure I'm going to get back for taking online classes that I didn't necessarily sign up for. And it's just the result of a really poor situation.
That's real. That's real. A friend of mine's daughter is a freshman at University of Oregon, Ernesto, and a week before classes started, they never got her a dorm, and it's freshman mandatory. You have to be on campus. So she's had to do. She doesn't live in Oregon. She lives in the West, but not in Oregon. So she's having to do the first year online. So on the flip side, my homie saved like $8,000 because he didn't have to pay for the expenses of being on campus. So it kind of worked for them the other way, but that was a disappointment in another sense. Sophia, for this segment, you get the last word. Any other messages you have for our young people around the country or our larger community out here?
For those that are bored.
Honestly, just like focus on yourself right now. I feel like, because like a lot of students have sports and school every single day, so they're going to be busy every single day, and they only get the 2-day weekend. But now we have all day, every single day to just like do whatever we wanted to, kind of at home.
Hey, Ernesto, I know you're very proud of these young people. Any final thoughts while we have your children on screen you wanted to share with our folks?
Yeah, you know what? Take advantage of the time that you have with your loved ones right now. Sit back and maybe listen a little bit more. That includes myself, because I hope people understand this sometimes, because sometimes you'll hear an expert, quote unquote, or somebody that's well versed on something, and you think, oh, their thing, their homes must be flawless, or their children make no mistakes, or they're perfect parents, and that's far from the truth. That's not the truth at all. But we do understand how to try to help others, as my children do as well. And I just want us to be able to tell our own kids how proud we are of them, how much we love them, and how, this is going to be a tough time. It really is. But tough times make you stronger. And my kids, unfortunately, know that and have seen that throughout my life and, some of my ups and downs. But that's going to go for all of us. So we can focus on all the negatives and all the bad thing that's happening, or we can try to look for the positives and the good things that are happening. And if they're not, then let's try to make them happen ourselves as much as possible.
No, and to your point earlier, Ernesto, is that thinking about what our families went through, right? And what some of our family are going through now.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is tough. And I know I can imagine for Sophia, these young people that have so much going on, the mental box here has got to be really frustrating.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we could be in much worse physical, peril here. I mean,
absolutely.
I don't have to go through all these examples, but, we got lights, we got, comfortable homes, we have food. So, it's all in perspective. I really appreciate Sophia and Jorge. Jorge, last time I saw you, about 2 feet shorter, and that was only like 4 years ago. So I don't know what Ernesto's feeding you, but whatever it is, he never shared it with me. And Sophia, young lady, hey, you guys are family, and your dad is like a brother to me. So thank you so much for your leadership. And we really appreciate seeing them. He is on the show. Let's bring back the crew here.
Thank you guys.
To stay on there, brother. So let's bring on the crew. Jeff, stay there. We're going to get to you. What a great show. Eva, wanted to give you the floor, my dear. Your final words to our Found in Translation community. Quite a time here. I know you're itching to get out of the house, girl. So I guess Zoom happy hours didn't say enough.
No. You already know I need to get out. I can't imagine, like, when you asked me to be on the show, I was like, oh my goodness, I get to do my hair today, because I go from the bedroom to the living room, like to the kitchen. All I know is that I'm a master chef because I cook 3 meals a day and snacks in between.
There you go.
I'm gonna need a great membership to the gym because I keep eating. I do want to say, for any of the parents watching, keep in mind to check in with your school. They are giving lunches.
Yeah.
So make sure that you are tapping into that as well. I do believe that McDonald's and Burger King also, as long as you have a school ID and you're under 18 or school age and have your ID, your school ID, they are giving Happy Meals. And it is some of you that are struggling at home. Also, a lot of internet providers are giving free internet or very, very low cost internet for those of you who need internet. So there are resources out there. So all I want to say is, from a parent's perspective and a teacher's perspective, try to Google and ask questions to get and tap into as many resources as possible. And what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. So yes, again, we have to tap into the positives and just realize that at least we do have this opportunity to be close. I mean, my son is leaving in a couple of weeks, or should I say a couple of months, to Virginia for Virginia State University. So I do enjoy having him home because soon he'll be gone.
Right.
So yeah, we do have to flip it. Journaling, keep in mind that history does repeat itself. So have your kids journal, write some things down, document some stuff. And in a couple of years, we'll be able to reflect on this and how we have circum all this.
Well, one of the things we have to, and I'm saying it publicly so we can hold ourselves accountable to it. Eva, the next time you come to the show, we're going to forget the teacher stuff. It'll be the beginning of the summer. Hopefully we'll be over this. And we can talk about your other great passion, which is travel. Eva's one of the great travel agents in our community. Eva, you got to got to make sure you support her travel business. So if you got cruises are, but anyway, you trying to do your thing. You're trying to do your thing. You're trying to go to the Caribbean or set up her specialty of these group packages. So definitely support Eva Mendez. Appreciate you, dear. You'll be back very soon. I want to make sure we get Jeff back on here. Jeff, brother, you've been very patient, enjoying the show in the background. Give us a final word, brother. I feel better about myself with all this inspirational conversation.
Well, listen, man, at the end of the day, a couple of thoughts come to mind. We really have to embrace the power of pivot. Look, we live in a different time. We all got to pivot. We got to pivot how we do business, and also how we engage and how we're present with our families, man. We got to strive to be the inspiration that we want to see. So, I challenge all of us to pray as a family, cook as a family, play games as a family, and finally, man, because we are Latinos, better dance as a family as well, man.
I like that.
And then watch out for each other's mental health, and finally, just give each other grace. This is a new day. We're in a new place, and we just got to be good to one another.
Ernesto, any final thoughts or anything you want to share about Cool Speak?
Well, first and foremost, thank you, brother, for having the Mejia clan on. It's an honor, and it's always great to be able to see your kids express themselves and do a good job, represent the Mejia as well. The last thing I'll say about Cool Speak and what we're doing, I'm very proud of our company and what we're able to do, and our team members wanting to give back, and our free events that you'll see soon on the website every week. Something free online for students and for parents, and also for the professionals that serve them, because they need some boost of inspirations as well. And just try and see what kind of resources are out there. The virtual world is completely changing right now because of this situation. You can go to Disney virtually right now. You can go to the museums virtually right now. You can go to the national parks virtually right now. So try to do some of those things, but even better sometimes, maybe unplug everything and just sit down and talk, play a game, interact, and just spend some quality time with one another. Because as much as we want to complain and we're getting homesick and we're like, oh, we got to get away from each other, it's just like the winter and the summer. When it's hot, you want it to be cold. When it's cold, you want it to be hot. And that's going to happen to us here soon again. But more importantly, be safe. And as my sister Lucia loves to say all the time, wash your damn hands.
You're right about that. Sulaih, my co-host, I'm going to give you the last word, Picorelli, because 2 months ago, you had no idea who I was. And now you're interacting with these incredible people. So I'm sure as a parent and as an activist, this conversation is giving you a lot to think about.
It most certainly has. And it's reminded me that we aren't doing so bad. The kids are really handling this so gracefully, so much better than we are as adults. So I'm so happy that we're able to have this conversation, not just for me, but for the community, and to, just stay positive. It's so easy being locked up for so many days consecutively that, like Eva was saying, today I get to put some makeup on. I get to do my hair. It's exactly how I feel. Because we are, these social creatures, and we're just used to touch and expressing love. So this has been, a test for me. And, I was taking down my notes and routines, all of these things. So I'm so grateful that we did this tonight.
I appreciate you. I appreciate Jeff. I appreciate Ernesto. Ernesto and Jeff were amongst my first 5 or 6 guests when I didn't know how to do the audio, the podcast. The logo was me doodling a yellow graffiti. It was so primitive that I think they were both part of the dinosaur era of Ray's talk show, because I didn't know. I'm so bad at the technology. I did 33 episodes before I could figure out how to get it on iTunes. So the first 33 episodes are somewhere on SoundCloud because I couldn't figure out how to get it on iTunes. Now I'm on Pandora, Spotify. Like, wow,
that's right.
It's like, once you get an RSS
feed,
you don't really
important is that you started.
That's right.
That's right. First step.
What's important is that you started.
But my point is that they were there with me when 18 people were listening, and they were encouraging to me of the stream and this vision, this platform. So I appreciate you guys. You guys are brothers. Sulaih, you're a new sister to the family. Eva's already always part of the crew, and Albert, your brother Jeff, your children, Jorge and Sophia, Ernesto, everybody that joined the show. Thank you for the audience. Jew was fanboying in the comment section. Christine, all of our Found in Translation community, you guys are all family to us. Thank you, support. We're now Google Podcast. Google Podcast now is an app. So for you Android heads that are always like, I don't know how to find you, it's so decentralized. Google Podcast app, very simple.
There you go.
For you Samsung people. So thank you all so much for joining the podcast, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Ray.